Homelessness isn't supposed to be something that you make cheap. Howdy, folks. Welcome to the Virtue Signal. I'm Alfonzo Rachel with my buddy Bill Whittle. And Bill, I saw this episode on Jesse Waters, and it just happened to come across my desk, man. I honestly, folks, I really don't tune into these news channels that much, man, because they make me nuts. So, but I just happened to catch wind of this one. It was a story he did on on Skid Row, right? And the story was this guy named Q, which if I understand correctly, is a vet. And he was able to, he's setting like the standard, man, for what it is to be homeless. All right. So he on Skid Row, he's taking his portion of the sidewalk, and instead of having a tent or something like that, this guy's got he made him like a shed. It's a solid shed. He's got electricity in it. I think he's got a washer and dryer. That might have been somebody else, but I think he's got a washer and dryer and all that sort of stuff, man. He's basically got like the Shangri-La on Skid Row, And now this, I guess, is newsworthy because, hey, man, he's showing how it's done, and he's being responsible, and he's making homelessness chic or in vogue or whichever. So now, but my contention is, even though I understand, I'm looking at Jesse Waters' response to it. And this kind of ties into what we were talking about earlier, Bill, in terms of promoting conservatism in the culture and the branding and things like that. This all ties into that. So I hope there's a utility in me talking about it. But in Jesse Waters' coverage of it, he seemed condescending, smug, and kind of ridiculing towards this guy who was doing what he was doing. And it's like, is that really the approach that we want to take? And, because this guy is really trying to show some initiative, and things like that. And trying to show, look, man, I'm not trying to be a bum. I'm really trying to pick myself
absolutely.
up.
Yeah.
Right?
I've got standards. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know if you saw the footage or not or heard about the story, but, what's your take on it?
Well, first of all, when you told me this guy was building like a semi-permanent resident with electricity and all the rest of it, I respect the guy enormously for that. He is applying all of the principles we believe in to a problem that shouldn't exist. Mm-hmm. That's the dichotomy, right? I don't want to normalize homelessness. I don't want to normalize the idea that you get to live under an overpass. But with that said, what is there not to admire about this guy? Right? He's not living in garbage. He's taken the initiative. He's gotten up early and stayed up late. He's gone to work. He's got a plan. He's got a design. He's sticking to it. He's doing everything that we believe in. He's entrepreneurial to that degree. And he shouldn't have to be putting all that time and effort to live under a bridge. So while I don't want to normalize the homelessness issue by saying, hey, look, just make a nice place for yourself under the bridge, I think, personally, my opinion about this guy Q is that he ought to be put in charge of the homeless situation, at least in Los Angeles, right? I don't think we need a Department of Homelessness. Nevertheless, this is exactly the kind of guy I would put in charge of Los Angeles' homeless problem, which is enormous, right? With festering piles of garbage with rats with bubonic plague, and it's just horrific, horrific. And the kind of person that you would need for something like that is somebody who actually has been on the street and knows not only what it's like, but what he had. Obviously, he has enough of a rebellion, of a revulsion against the situation, against the environment he found himself in, to do something about it. And no doubt that comes from him being a vet. And I have no question about that. So what is it that he did right by himself that he could then help make right with some resources behind him? And speaking of resources, a couple, 3-4 years ago, I saw a guy who was I don't know if he's a Roman Catholic priest, but he was definitely a man of God. And he was running this downtown mission for the homeless, and he had his leg amputated because he got bitten by a rat, and the rat had God knows what, right? So this guy's down there on the streets working with homeless people out of his own pocket. And he said that, and the number was incredible. I mean, it was like, how much money has been allocated for homelessness in LA this year? And it's something like 30 million or 300 million. It's some insane number like that to build low-income housing. How many units have actually been built so far, Father? So the $300 million or whatever just kind of, yep. Okay. If you want to solve the problem, you cannot solve a problem that's been going on for decades by doing the same thing over and over again. It will take money to solve this problem, but not only can the money not just evaporate into politicians' pockets, the money has to be spent on, I think personally for the homeless issue, I think it's kind of triage, frankly. The whole idea of triage is you don't waste resources. For those of you who might not be familiar with the term, I know virtually all of you are, but anyway, it was a French term meaning threes. And basically when there was an enormous amount of combat casualties coming in, I think it was probably the First World War, though I'm not sure about that. Got a limited number of surgeons and a limited number of medicine and a limited number of operating tables. And the idea of triage is, okay, 1/3, it doesn't have to actually be a third, but 3 categories. 1/3 of the people that come in, one category, are people who are so badly wounded that they will not survive, even if we get them on the operating table now. If we put these people that are going to die on the operating table now, then all we're doing is using an operating table for the same result. So those people get taken off to a side, and ideally you give them medication for their pain because they're going to die either way. The other side of the triage is you have people who are lightly wounded enough so that they require medical care, but they don't require medical care right this second, right? So those people can be bandaged and they can be set off to the side, ideally with painkillers, but nevertheless, they're not the ones. The people that you want to put into the operating room are the people who will die without the operation, but you still have a chance to save, right? That's the whole idea of triage. Get rid of the people that cannot be helped, get rid of the people that don't need to be helped right now, and take whatever resources you have to save the lives that can actually be saved. And I look at homelessness the same way. There is without question a significant number, and probably most of the people that are living on the street are people who cannot be saved by any kind of intervention. They are severe mental illness or completely debilitating dependency on drugs or alcohol or both, and they cannot function on their own. You can put them into brand new housing and it doesn't matter. They'll probably be out in the street again anyway. So that category, you don't put them aside and let them die. You put them aside and put them in mental institutions where they belong, where they get some care. On the other side, you got people who are somewhat temporarily on the street, right? They got evicted from their apartment and they got a cash shortage or something. And there's probably programs that could help get people back into that. And in the middle, you've got, it's not the middle because I think most of the people are badly damaged, but there are people that can benefit from things like low-income housing programs, as long as those programs are dependent on getting them back on their feet. If you make it clear that you used to be living on the street, now we're going to put you in an apartment that you don't have to work for, that doesn't solve the problem, right? In fact, it creates more problems. Make more people who are paying rent stop paying rent so they can get into the rent-free apartments. So I think that's how you have to look at it. And a guy like this would be the guy who would most likely, to me, be able to say, the smart thing to do is to do this over here, this here, and do that over there.
Indeed, man. And the approach that you're even talking about, it's the selling point and the operative word is compassion.
That's right.
And it's hard to take being subjective out of it. When we're talking about, this person is not going to make it, you're going to have to write an X on their head. This person is not going to make it. And from there, that's when the emotion comes in. And it's hard to keep people from viewing you as callous. It's like, look, man, this is the compassionate thing to do. Or even, and how you're talking about it. But like I said, bringing up with, Jesse Waters, is like, look, man, it doesn't sound like you really have, this is an opportunity for you to make a joke about this.
Yeah, and that's exactly the thing we don't need.
Right. We don't need that. And the thing is, the whole approach to solving homelessness is a joke in itself, with these liberals who run these areas. But like I said, I can understand at the same time why, Jesse Waters would come at it the way that he does, because just like you were alluding to, we don't want to encourage this kind of thing. Homelessness isn't supposed to be something that you make chic. It's not supposed to be something that you're comfortable in. You want to get out of it. You don't want to become good at it. I mean, you want to be able to survive and stuff like that. But look, man, if you got that kind of savvy and you got that kind of, resourcefulness and innovation, man, get to working your way out of this. But I mean, I'm kind of examining, when I observed Q, I could kind of see that part of his issue is that he does have issues with authority. I guess he didn't want to be involved in any programs. He likened them to be like concentration camps. And I'm like, maybe I can give you the benefit of the doubt, man, but I don't know if you've been through anything here in your state that's probably been anything like a concentration camp. That might be a little bit too rhetorical, but you do you. But I'm watching the interview, and when a person refuses to make eye contact with the person that they're talking to,
he's got some problems.
Yeah, it's like, okay, you really don't want to be faced up with the truth about what you're doing. Don't get me wrong, man. It's like you got the right idea, but it's misguided. It doesn't have the redeeming value that you think it does, and he probably doesn't want to be faced with that. So I totally understand. But once again, it's an opportunity, still to take even something like that. Maybe he doesn't get it, but maybe for other people to show them that, hey, man, we would really like to showcase this guy in an effort to help the homelessness problem, not use him as a prop to make, fun of. I think that's essential for us, Bill, in our branding, to say that, hey, man, what, we really do want to help fix this.
This is the source of, this is why we lose, right? Or to put it even more precisely, this is why we don't win all the time, right? Because of this perceived callousness, which in many cases is real callousness, right? Now, back to the example of this guy and the triage example, because I know Media Matters is paying somebody to listen to this. So let me just make this clear in the same episode. When I was talking about homeless triage, I wasn't saying that the people, I said it earlier, I'm going to say it again, just for those of you taking notes back there, that when we talk about whatever percentage of the population is triaged out of the ability to recover and live on their own, that doesn't mean we throw them in a garbage dump. That's kind of what you guys do. That means we put them into mental health care centers because they are not capable of taking care of themselves. And it is the cruelest thing you can do to an individual who can't take care of themselves, to kick them out on the street in the cold so they can be raped and assaulted and stuck with needles and all the rest of it. There's a picture that came out just a couple days ago of some guy who was passed out on the street and just completely out of it in drugs. And there's another homeless guy picking his pockets, right? That's what homelessness is. So those people need treatment. And I'd be willing to bet you that most of them are not capable of living on the street. However, I've had some interactions with homeless people and talk to them, because it's funny what will happen when you actually talk to somebody like they're a person. You can actually learn an awful lot if you listen. And there is a significant number, and we started seeing this relatively recently, like 5, 6, 7 years ago. In LA, we got huge homeless problem here. I started seeing people who were very different than the traditional homeless kind of person was. We started seeing a lot more of them, and they were young and healthy, and they were living on the street. And your first reaction is, why should I give you $1? McDonald's is hiring, right? But homeless people know that when you stare at somebody in the eyes, they're more likely to give you $1 than just drive off. So it's a job. And when you talk to people like that, who are, we'll just say for the sake of it, homeless by choice, what I found is that the reason that they're homeless is not that life is, it's not like they're not making enough money. It's just that life is too complex for them. Many, many times I talk to people who said, look, at least out here, I don't have to deal with electric bills, health insurance. I don't have to deal with, with ID. I don't have to deal with all of the things that you have to deal with in American life today. My wife from Russia can't believe how complex things are here and how many different checks you have to write just on a monthly basis, right? They just want to get off the grid because it's simpler for them. Those people don't have mental health problems. They have maybe attitude problems, or maybe they're more neurotic than psychotic. And then there are people who are just plain down on their luck. And those are people who can be helped immediately. I don't know what percentage it is. My gut feeling is it's a rather small percentage, but that problem can be solved very quickly. If you're down on your luck and you need a hand up, and as long as there's accountability, great. So when we talk about this guy Q as an example, I wouldn't put Q in charge of deciding where $300 million that's already been allocated gets spent, because I suspect he's got some problems with making decisions. But what I would do is I would use his expertise, his knowledge, his clear initiative, and I would use him not so much to decide, so much as to say, what should we do that you think works? And then we go and start exploring those ideas. And then we start treating homelessness the way Elon Musk treats spaceflight. And that is, instead of one massive monumental system, right, that costs billions of dollars, a space launch system, instead of that, we start doing lots of little things and seeing which ones take off and which ones explode. And then we do more of the things that take off and less of the things that explode. And much of that is transferable throughout the country, because a great deal of homelessness is a national epidemic. So if you learn that something works really, really well in Dallas, let's say, you probably could export that to other cities with a great deal of success. And I would just treat it like I would treat homelessness like it was a problem that I intended to solve rather than a problem that I intended to perpetuate. Because $300 million gone, and it went somewhere. So now you know.
Indeed, man, and that's exactly what it is. It's a problem it's useful for Democrats in the terms of and how this plays out in all the policies that we have to live under. It's another plight that the left is able to use. When they look at the homeless issue, which of course they don't want to solve, they use that as a means to illustrate how evil look at I think was it Susan Sarandon took video of like Skid Row, right? And
look how awful America is,
right? How and the comments are, look at capitalism at work, right? And as you said, it's like capitalism has been used as a pejorative, the bourgeoisie and their materialism and stuff like that, and Karl Marx used, was able fashioned the term after capital, which already, the term already exists. And we're talking about something that belongs to you. It is yours. It is your capital. It belongs to you. It's your property. And the state is supposed to recognize that. And then Marx took that and turned it into a pejorative. But it's not. What's wrong with it? What is wrong with, when the government is not supposed to be able to violate our right to property and invade our capital. They're not supposed to be able to do that. But unfortunately, we have this antithetical amendment in the Constitution where they're able to. But they're able to use illustrations. They take these real things and they make illustrations out of them, and they use that to beat us over the head with concerning other policies, or try to say something like Republicans are at fault for this because Reagan. It's because of Reagan, and the thing is, they're the ones who wanted it. They're the ones who wanted it to be where you can't put homeless into asylums, and that wasn't Reagan's fault. That was a Supreme Court decision. That wasn't Reagan.
And Susan Sarandon is driving through the city shooting all of these footage of homeless people. It's not capitalism that's a problem. It's Democrats that are a problem. Yeah. You not only voted for the people that put this homelessness in place, you campaigned for them. You raised money for them, right? You elected the people that made this problem a problem. Yes. Not us, you. And by the way, that enormous garbage pile that was in LA for months or years, probably with all the thousands, millions of rats, was eventually cleaned up. You know who cleaned it up? 20 conservatives came from out of state in hazmat suits and cleaned it up in a day. Then they left.
Man,
conservatives came into Los Angeles, got paid nothing, cleaned it up, and then left.
Yeah.
Perfect. That's exactly who we are.
Yes. And you probably won't hear much about that in the media. And
no, of course not.
And if they could have been taxed for it, they probably would have. But I guess
undoubtedly they would have been penalized and required a license in order to operate and all the rest of this stuff. Anything to perpetuate the existing misery.
Absolutely. But they must have came in like ninjas, man. And kudos to them for doing it. But just to even show folks that, that they use this stuff and how out of touch they are. Man, even homeless people showed up to where Maxine Waters was. And she's like, okay, y'all need to. And she knows that they're homeless. And she's like, y'all need to disperse and y'all need to go home. They're shouting at her to say, we ain't got no home. So they're really
She won again though, didn't she?
Man. And see, now that's the sad part, man. Man, that's a whole nother can of worms. How these people are able to keep on winning. What is it? And we got to ask the question. Is it our ability to promote our principles and present ourselves, represent ourselves in the culture? Is it so bad that these people are able to do what they're able to do and keep on doing it and still get office? Or is
Yes, it is.
Okay, man, we got to do
take a look
something
at the
about
other episode this week.
That's right. We got to do something about that, folks. Our work is cut out for us, but hey, we're ready to ride if you are. And if you're not, we're still going to ride anyway. And we thank you guys for supporting us to help keep gas in the delivery truck so we can go ahead and keep in operation. So make sure you boogie on over to BillWhittle.com. We sure do thank you. And we'll see you next time in the Virtue Signal.